China, 1959. A devastating famine swept the land. Millions perished in silence. Yet no one dared to speak a single word. But there was one man who refused to remain silent. Peng Dehuai, a celebrated marshal and war hero, believed truth could save China. However, in Mao's era, speaking truth was considered treason. His fate was sealed the moment he dared to question the Great Leap Forward. This is the story of a general who confronted a dictator, and what he paid for it was everything. Peng Dehuai was born in 1898 in a poor village in Hunan, the very same province as Mao Zedong. Both grew up experiencing constant hunger. Both grew up fighting against the world surrounding them. Yet only one of them would eventually learn to fear the truth. Peng became a soldier long before he became a revolutionary. By the age of 20, he was already a seasoned, battle-hardened fighter. He joined the communist movement not primarily for ideology, but because he truly believed peasants deserved adequate food and soldiers deserved basic dignity. Historian Jonathan Spence describes him as one of the few commanders who combined intense ferocity on the battlefield with genuine compassion for the common Chinese soldier. Throughout the 1920s and 30s, Peng steadily rose through the ranks. He led the Red Army through brutal conflicts against the nationalists. He commanded with a strict discipline, not with cruelty. When officers were caught stealing grain from the peasants, he punished them severely. When soldiers mistreated civilians, he always intervened personally. He earned something quite rare in revolutionary China: the people's loyalty. By the mid-1930s, during the arduous Long March, Peng proved his capabilities once more. While Mao secured his political influence, Peng solidified his military respect. By 1949, when the Communists finally achieved control of China, Peng Dehuai stood as a national hero, a crucial pillar of the new government. Mao placed his trust in him. Mao valued his input. Mao certainly needed him. However, history consistently shows that dictators rarely tolerate equals around them. And within Mao's world, heroes inevitably become dangerous the moment they rise too high. Peng was completely unaware of this yet, but the man he had helped place in power would one day bury him alive. When the Korean War suddenly erupted in 1950, Mao turned to one man he knew would not disappoint him: Peng Dehuai. China was impoverished, completely exhausted, and barely recovering from decades of intense civil war. The People's Liberation Army possessed virtually no modern weaponry, yet Mao deployed them into a conflict against the United States, the most powerful military force on the planet. According to historian Chen Jian, Mao urgently needed a commander who possessed discipline, resilience, and absolute clarity under extreme pressure. Peng was undeniably the only suitable choice. Peng didn't hesitate. He swiftly crossed the Yalu River with hundreds of thousands of Chinese soldiers, many lacking proper winter attire, many without adequate weapons, all marching directly into a frozen, unforgiving battlefield. What happened next immediately transformed Peng into an international legend. He powerfully forced the U.S. Eighth Army into a complete retreat. He successfully stabilized the volatile front lines. He secured China significant international respect, not through eloquent speeches, but through immense sacrifice and blood. Back in Beijing, Peng was widely celebrated as a true hero. Crowds joyfully chanted his name. Mao publicly praised him with great admiration. For a brief moment, Peng genuinely believed the two men were still close allies, still united by the revolution they had fought so hard for. But power has a way of changing men, and Mao was no longer the simple guerrilla leader he once was. He had now become the chairman of an entire nation, a chairman who absolutely could not tolerate any shadows being cast near his supreme throne. Peng's military victories made him universally admired, His unwavering honesty made him deeply respected, and his growing reputation ultimately made Mao increasingly uneasy, because every dictator profoundly fears the man that the entire army truly loves. Peng had saved Mao's revolution on the battlefield. But very soon, he would challenge Mao where it would hurt him the most, in the stark truth that he steadfastly refused to hear. In 1958, Mao dramatically launched the ambitious Great Leap Forward, a radical campaign designed to rapidly force China into instant industrial greatness. But across villages throughout the country, the intended reality soon devolved into a terrible nightmare. Communes began inflating their reported harvest numbers. Officials relentlessly lied to impress the central government in Beijing. Grain that did not actually exist was forcefully shipped to the state. The ensuing famine spread quietly at first, then completely uncontrollably. Historian Frank Decoder estimates that by the end of 1958, millions were already in a state of severe starvation. Yet, still no one dared to speak openly. No one felt comfortable contradicting Mao directly. No one, with the notable exception of Peng Dehuai. Serving as the defense minister, Peng embarked on travels across the countryside. He personally witnessed peasants boiling tree bark to survive. He saw numerous corpses lying by the roadside. He observed fields where crops had completely withered into dust. And he meticulously documented every single detail he observed. Peng possessed a deep understanding of warfare. He understood profound suffering. But this particular famine was fundamentally different. It was entirely man-made, born not from any natural disaster, but from pervasive fear of Mao himself. Initially, Peng firmly believed he could still reason with the chairman effectively. They had previously disagreed on matters. They had endured immense hardship together in the past. Surely, simply telling the truth could not be considered a crime. But in a totalitarian dictatorship, truth was never viewed as a simple report. It was perceived as a direct threat. By the summer of 1959, Peng diligently prepared a significant letter, composed in a calm, respectful, and precise manner. A letter that would ultimately destroy his entire life, because Mao was no longer actively seeking honesty from his subordinates. He was exclusively searching for absolute loyalty, absolute, unquestioned, blind obedience. And Peng was about to become the singular individual who would say the one thing that absolutely no one else dared to utter: "Chairman, the people are starving." July 1959, the highest levels of Chinese leadership convened in Lushan, a peaceful mountain retreat. The primary purpose was to celebrate the supposed success of the Great Leap Forward and to strongly rally behind Mao's leadership. But Peng arrived with something entirely different tucked away in his briefcase. The undeniable truth. On July 14, 1959, he personally handed Mao a private letter. It was not intended as an attack, nor was it a public denunciation. It was a heartfelt plea, calm, measured, and deeply patriotic. Historian Roderick McFarquhar notes that Peng's message was a sincere caution from a devoted military man, not a defiance of Mao's status. However, autocrats don't read with their sight. Their reading stems from their anxieties. Mao perceives disloyalty in every sentence. Peng discusses crop failure. Mao senses scheming. Peng writes about exaggerated yield statistics. Mao discerns deliberate deception. Peng suggests policy adjustments. Mao hears the insinuation, "You have faltered," something he cannot overlook. For several days, Mao remains silent publicly. He presents a calm demeanor. He acts the kind chairman. Yet, in private discussions, he tells his closest associates, "Peng Dehuai intends to depose me." Whether he genuinely believes this or merely needs an adversary is now irrelevant. At Lushan, Mao convenes supporters, individuals apprehensive of disagreeing with him. He orchestrates a political downfall not through violence or torment but via humiliation. Because within Mao's system, the initial step to ruining an individual is compelling the entire party to witness his downfall. Peng's correspondence served as a caution. Mao's reaction would lead to his death. Gradual, methodical, and absolute. The Lushan Conference undergoes a swift transformation. One moment, Peng Dehuai stands as the revered Marshal of China, the hero who secured the revolution. The next, he is designated Mao's foe. On August 2, 1959, Mao executes his scheme. He summons the party leaders to convene. Peng enters the assembly expecting deliberation. Instead, he walks into a verbal execution. Mao speaks initially, composed, chilling, lethal. He accuses Peng of assaulting the party, undermining the Great Leap initiative, and attempting to form a faction against the party. No concrete proof, only Mao's assertion. And in an authoritarian state, that suffices. Historian Lu Binyan later commented, "From the instant Mao branded Peng a traitor, the entire assembly understood the necessity to condemn him. Not an individual's viewpoint, a death sentence imposed by dread." Sequentially, high-ranking officials rise to denounce Peng. Some display reluctance. Mao fixes his gaze on them until they yield. Even individuals who previously served under Peng, commanders he safeguarded, subordinates he advanced, turn against him. They label him grasping, a counter-revolutionary element, a malevolent serpent. Peng remains motionless throughout hours of disparagement. He attempts just once to vindicate himself. Mao strikes the table forcefully. "Be seated," the chairman commands sternly. "Your career is over." In that very instant, the attendees grasp the reality. This conflict transcends policy matters. It is fundamentally about Mao's pride. Peng Dehuai is divested of his positions, dismissed as the defense minister, publicly disgraced, and personally targeted. However, Mao's actions are not concluded. Not yet. Public degradation is merely the commencement. A dictator must accomplish more than merely punishing dissent. He must eradicate the dissenter from historical records. And Mao is poised to ensure that Peng Dehuai vanishes not only from the political arena but also from existence itself. This represents the consequence for conveying truth to Mao. Peng Dehuai departs Lushan defeated yet still alive. Mao's intention is to rectify this situation. Over the subsequent years, Mao transforms Peng into a political phantom. He is removed from public office, severed from the military, stripped of all authority. His name becomes taboo, his presence a liability. Historian Maurice Meisner observes, Peng was not merely sidelined. He was isolated, surveilled, and progressively dismantled in a fashion calculated to break him without causing immediate demise. Peng is reassigned to a remote location in Sichuan, ostensibly for agricultural assessment, but in reality to be forgotten. He resides in a modest, damp dwelling, lacking assistance, influence, or a voice, a marshal reduced to an insignificant mention. Yet, even in this state, the party maintains surveillance. Every communication he dispatches is examined. Every visitor is vetted. Every utterance could be used against him. During these periods, Peng's most significant transgression is straightforward. He refuses to recant his statements. He does not withdraw his Lushan correspondence. He offers no apology to Mao. He does not plead for clemency. And autocrats despise individuals who refuse to submit. By the time the Cultural Revolution begins to gain momentum, Mao seeks out past adversaries to fuel the new ideological fervor. Peng's name is ideal. A traitor, a capitalist sympathizer, the individual who insulted the chairman. Peng senses the approaching upheaval. His acquaintances discreetly caution him. Mao has not forgotten your existence. He responds with the candidness that marked his life's trajectory. I articulated the truth. If truth constitutes an offense, then I embrace the ramifications. However, Mao desires more than mere consequences. He seeks retribution. And in 1966, the Cultural Revolution furnishes him with the ultimate instrument. Countless young Red Guards eager to dismantle Mao's opponents. Peng Dehuai has endured warfare, scarcity, and treachery, but he will not survive Mao's final reprisal. The Cultural Revolution erupts across China. Mao dispatches the Red Guards, millions of adolescents equipped with ideology and fury, to subjugate all adversaries of the chairman. And Mao already has a designation for them, a name he has awaited 7 years to pronounce. Peng Dehuai. On July 25, 1966, the Red Guard forces raid Peng's residence. They forcibly remove the 68-year-old marshal from his sleeping quarters. They strip away his garments, beaten and subjected to humiliation. Paraded before crowds that once hailed him as a hero. Historian Frank Decoder characterizes these events as public acts of degradation engineered to strip away a person's dignity. Peng's interrogation commences without delay. Peng's questioning starts right away, not for facts, but for a confession. Admit that you betrayed Chairman Mao. Admit you undermined the revolution. Peng refused, so they assaulted him repeatedly. And then again his ribs snapped audibly. His teeth were loosened from their sockets. He slumped onto the ground, a respected Chinese marshal, now reduced to a broken, elderly figure, surrounded by youngsters demanding his demise. However, the true penalty was yet to come. In the beginning of 1967, Peng was moved to a concealed military facility in Beijing. His confinement area was tiny, dim, frigid during winter, and stifling in summer. Officers only entered to question or physically abuse him. According to historical records by Michael Schoenholz, Peng endured constant torment, lack of sleep, and severe hunger for almost a full decade, nearly 10 years, isolated in his cell. His physical body deteriorated first, followed by his emotional state. Yet, he never provided Mao the admission he desperately sought, absolutely never. By the year 1973, Peng was unable to stand or move on his own. His backbone was injured from numerous beatings. He had significant difficulty breathing. He pleaded earnestly, not for his freedom, but simply for medical aid. The guards denied his requests. They were simply waiting for him to perish. On November 29, 1974, after enduring 8 years of brutal mistreatment, the very individual who preserved Mao's revolution passed away while held in state custody. The documented reason for his death was untreated bladder cancer and general neglect. The government secretly disposed of his remains. No public statement, no funeral rites, no commendations were issued. A celebrated figure was completely erased from history. Only after Mao himself passed away in 1976 did the actual events begin to surface gradually. Peng received exoneration and rehabilitation in 1978. His reputation was reinstated, his devotion recognized. But this acknowledgement arrived far too late. The sole person who dared to voice the honest truth had already sacrificed everything with his life. Within Mao's China, speaking truthfully was deemed the gravest offense, and Peng Dehuai, the general who spoke honestly, was executed without firing a shot.